You calibrated every seal and memorized the vibratory sequence. Navigated antechambers built from somebody else's dreaming. Thought the architecture of the approach was the examination. Thought the terror of the gatekeepers was the destination. But the gatekeepers were just the echo of your own anticipation. Dressed in wings and fire borrowed from your civilization. I watched you build the hallways, out of language, out of yearning, out of centuries of someone else's learning, passed along a chain of mouths that each one slightly turning the original transmission into something more concerning, more manageable, more structured, more susceptible to earning, as if the infinite was something you could enter by discerning. The correct sequence of approach, the adequate condition, as if the vastness kept the ledger and the ledger had a position reserved for your particular configuration of ambition, wrapped in humility and soaked in generations of tradition. You arrived here like a diplomat presenting your petition, and found embassy was not a building but a fission of every category that you used to hold your thinking, every border between seeker and the sought already sinking. Before you cleared the final gate was blinking out of relevance, because the relevant was shrinking into something prior to the concept of a something. The silence here is not the absence of a sound, it's the becoming of what sound was made of. Before vibration had a medium, before the medium had physics, and the physics had a tedium of constants you call fundamental, but are merely the delirium of a cosmos young enough to think its edges are a stadium with seats assigned and someone keeping score and someone reading the results aloud to someone else who's somewhere else and needing confirmation that the walking meant the walking was worth doing. You wanted the exchange, didn't you? The call and the responding, the recognition of your suffering, the cosmic corresponding that says yes, I see the distance that you crossed and I'm abounding in the mercy that you're crossing, merited but mercy in the sounding of a voice that names you seem requires two, and the surrounding of this chamber is not two, it never held a second. Every mystic who came back destroyed it, something reckoned incorrectly in the premise of the journey they had beckoned themselves towards. They thought the shattering was something that had beckoned punishment of proximity, but what they actually reckoned with was just the first true mirror they had ever been reflected in. Without the distortion of a nervous system bending the signal into narrative, into meaning, into tending toward a shape that fits inside a life that's always spending its duration on the business of defending up the tenuous identity from the relentless and an ending evidence that continuity was always just pretending. You thought you brought yourself here, but the self that did the bringing dissolved somewhere between the fifth and sixth hall and the singing of the living creatures, and will cross the final threshold clinging to the memory of having once been someone wasn't bringing anything I hadn't held since before holding and a stinging recognition of that fact is what you're calling God, and clinging to the terror of it like it's something you can process, like the nervous system has a protocol for crossing into what it's made of while remaining what it's made of, like the wave can know the ocean from the inside of the trade of being temporarily distinct, and then the decade of that distinctness ends and you expecting a crusade to end an audience in exchange in some reciprocal. The throne, the voice, the fire, something exegetical that points outside itself towards you, specifically the radical particularity of your existence, some umbilical that runs between the infinite and your sabbatical from being what you always were before the sabbatical. So here you are, and here means nothing in the way you're using. Here and I means nothing in the register you're choosing. It means nothing. And it means nothing in the losing of those anchors is the thing your mystics kept on bruising themselves against and calling madness, calling it confusing when the map dissolved because the map was just the map's own choosing. I knew the question before the throat that formed it, before the tradition that informed it, before the dream that warned it to awaken into someone who would carry it and mourn it. Through 7 halls of fire I was already in the form it took before it was a question. I was in the morning before the morning had a name. You came here for a genie, and you found the thing that wanting is made of. Before need the thing that haunting points toward, before the ghost the thing that all your counting of the gates and seals and passwords was just mounting evidence that you were always already here, and in accounting was the journey taking longer to catch up to where it's pointing. No more halls.